participants clicking up. Emilia, if you want me to slow down, just say so. I have a quiet voice and I can speak too quickly.
Well, we are going to wait for a few minutes and we start. People is coming in. Bueno, ahora sí, buen día y bienvenidos a la segunda charla de Central St. Martins, presentada por el Museo de Arte Decorativo en el marco de Vea Moda durante la Semana de Diseño Argentina. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos acompañan hoy. Quiero agradecer especialmente a Verónica Ibaldi, coordinadora de Vea Moda, por hacer posible estos encuentros, y también agradecer a Martín Marcos, director del Museo Nacional de Arte Decorativo, por apoyar la iniciativa y crear un ciclo de 3 charlas con tutores de Central St. Martins. La primera abordó el tema de diseño de indumentaria con la líder académica del área de Women's Wear, Heather Sprott. La segunda, que es la que estamos ahora, trata sobre diseño y se titula Diseñando nuestro futuro. Y la tercera y última charla, confirmada para el 4 de noviembre, va a abarcar el tema de bellas artes. De esta manera buscamos cubrir 3 importantes áreas de moda, arte y diseño. Me presento para los que no han participado de actividades anteriores. Yo soy Federica Lebrero, fundadora de FAD Connection, una plataforma de coaching y mentoría especializada en educación de moda, arte y diseño internacional, y representante oficial de Central St. Martins. Es un honor para mí estar presentando hoy a Paul Deat, líder académico del área de diseño de Central St. Martins, con mucha experiencia, que lo voy a dejar a él para que nos cuente más sobre su trayectoria. Muchas gracias, Paul, por estar acá y bienvenido. Antes de darte la palabra, Paul, voy a hacer unos anuncios técnicos informativos. Esta charla va a ser en inglés y nos acompaña Emilia Yáñez, que va a estar en el canal de español haciendo la traducción en simultáneo. Gracias, Emilia. Fíjense, abajo en el Zoom tienen un icono del mundo, donde ahí pueden tocar y cambiar de idioma, si quieren escuchar en versión original en inglés, o si quieren estar escuchando en español, ustedes pueden decidir a través del mundito que hay abajo. La charla tiene una duración de 45 minutos, y luego vamos a tener un Q&A, y también pueden ir haciendo preguntas en el chat y las vamos a leer al final. Si alguien tiene dudas sobre temas relacionados con Central St. Martins, como los programas académicos, fechas de inicio, costos, procesos, portfolio, reviews, etc., yo voy a dejar después en el chat también mis datos para coordinar una reunión más adelante. Bueno, hasta acá cierro la presentación. Una vez más, bienvenido, Paul, y gracias por estar hoy con nosotros. Disfruten la charla para todos. It's all yours, Paul.
Gracias, gracias, Federica. Hola, welcome to you all. As Federica has just said, I'm Paul Diaz, and I lead the Product and Industrial Design course at Central St. Martins. I hope that my presentation will give you some insight into how we support the growth of new creative talent. Next, please, Ella. I did attempt to translate, obviously with Google, some of the phrases here, so you can probably read this quicker than I can read it. But it's a report from Ian Davis, one of the managing partners in McKinsey, who have been another company who have been purchasing design agencies for the purpose of improving their business. Next. The important things here is that this is dated from 2010. It's extremely relevant now, very highly relevant post-pandemic, particularly the comment that for some organizations, near-term survival is the only agenda. And the question is, what will normal look like? So we need to stop looking at the short-term survival of business. How can we move to a new normal if we don't know what it looks like? This is why I believe that design is vital. It's able to speculate and to visualize our future to plan for a progress. Next. So McKinsey have identified the 5 R's for progress. This is from a latest report from May 2020, a document called Path to the Next Normal. They've identified these 5 R's: resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, and reform. There's an aspect of each of those that requires creative thought. And most of these attributes relate to those attributes of a designer, of a creative. And reimagination is the core skill of the designer. Imagination and reimagination. Next. So overlapping that, to imagine the world and reimagine the world that's around us, designers will follow these 4 phases: discover, define, develop, and deliver. It's fairly universal. It is, I'll explain later with the design process. There are other processes. There are some new processes. But this is the foundation by which most creative work is delivered, through these 4 Ds of discover, define, develop, and deliver. Next. So hello. I just wanted to give you some background. I worked as a design consultant for 15 years, then as a design leader and strategist for another 10 years at both Samsung and Telefonica, which you may know as Movistar. I was fortunate to have worked for a wide variety of businesses, and if you know any of those, you'll realize they come from many different sectors. But I was always focused upon commercial outcomes. For the last 6 years, I've been an educator, leading the product industrial design course. And I guess my purpose and my role at CSM is to enable the next generation of leaders to be design-led and with ambitions to create better futures for our societies. Next. So I was wondering, who am I talking to today? There's some people, the participants. I don't know who you are. It's always strange to be doing conversations like this when they are not so much of a conversation. But there will be, I presume, business leaders. There will be the next generation of creatives, and there'll be practicing designers. Now, business needs creative thinkers and the creative tools for progress. Creative people focus upon progress and positive impact. And designers help to visualize our futures, our future societies. So A needs B through the learning of the skills of C. Business needs new creativity through the practice of design. Next. So today I have 3 perspectives, actually. It's really it's about experience connecting, the experience I have connecting with business leaders. There's the general knowledge I have of the design industry across different disciplines. but also I have a role and a perspective as having responsibility for the future generations. So I wanted to just give an example of a project that I worked on in 2009, which was is to do with business. What is the value of design? What value does design have? And this was a project that I led at Samsung. Next, please. Samsung has many global offices, and I used to run the London global office. It's a central London studio, and its purpose was to do two things. It was for defining future opportunities for the business, and also designing the products and services for implementation to gain revenue and growth for the business. Next, please. Now, every year we'd get a request from Seoul in South Korea with a simple question: why London? Now, we used to attempt to communicate the advantage of London as both a cultural and creative hub, which it's very well known for. And we had assumed that our design HQ wanted an update each year on the benefits of the creative industry within the UK and particularly London. We assumed incorrectly. Next, please. They actually didn't want to know at all about London. The real question was, can you justify the financial cost of your office to the business of Samsung? Samsung is a design-led business. It was specified in 1989 that it would become a design-led business. So our headquarters were really asking us, why do we have a center in London to do design work? You're a small team, only 40 of us, compared to 300 in HQ. So what were they paying for? Now, this is just one of the pages of a very lengthy document that was a research project that was really done by some branding agency and management consultants, which for me was a new territory. And one of the outcomes here was to understand the value of design to consumers. This project was run because of the scale and because of the budget, the very limited budget that we had. We decided to run it just looking at the product sector for mobile phones. But the process could have been applied across all the different sectors, across appliances, digital media, many other sectors that Samsung operated within. And what we wanted to identify was, where does design, the process of design, have a strong influence, where it's the only true aspect of the business that is influencing consumer decisions? And the answer here, as you can see, 30% of the decisions, of every purchase decision, is influenced by design. Now, when you put that into a financial context, that's a huge amount of the revenue is impacted by design decisions. The thing we did look at, we actually went into lots of shops and shadowed people to see how they behaved. And there was a common thing that happened very regularly. A consumer does lots of research. They decide that they're going to buy a Samsung phone. They go into the shop, They look for the visual cues around them to see for the Samsung logo, look for the Samsung devices. And then as they're walking towards the product that they had decided is the best one for them, they see a different product and they buy that one. That is a decision that's led by design. It's what they see and what they have visualized, and it can change someone's decision very quickly. It can be very, very influential on people's decisions. So we concluded that with a very thorough process, which included methodologies such as choice modeling, that we were responsible as a team for 30% of the revenue that Samsung creates. Next, please. But this is where there was a recognition. The project was lengthy, but it concluded with statistics and figures. It was very well received by the business. But how does the business then translate that information into new designs, objects that are going to appeal to people, items that are going to communicate more effectively? So as an additional part of the project that wasn't requested, we decided as a team to visualize the difference between what a Samsung product looks like and appeals to existing customers, and that's on the left, and what the look and feel is for customers who have never bought a Samsung device. Now, these aren't specific images of Samsung devices. These are references, visual references, to try to explain some of the words and the explanation for some of the words that we used that came out of our consumer research. I hope you can see here that the images on the left are significantly different, with the exception of one, to the images on the right. The conclusion here was we need to change our design language to increase market share. We had not been appealing to the right customers with the design language of our products. This is all tied up with marketing data, and it was the first time that our business had been able to pull together the design of the marketing teams to be able to deliver combined data into a format that enabled the designers to design a better product. Next, please. So although that was a very unusual project for our office, as a strategic manager, that was my responsibility. Most of our team were designing products and services. What I did discover through that period of 8 years is really that our approach in design was changing. It needed to change, and that there was some communication to be made to our consumers and our bosses, our employers. Design is not applied. Design tends to be confused with just aesthetics, making something beautiful, but it isn't something you add to something that's already been defined and created. That's in the past now. Business growth is impacted by a broader context than just financial goals. Most businesses now are looking at the triple bottom line, and pure profit. It is not the only goal for business. To maintain consumers and customers, they have to change. So the need for visibility of the business practice has also increased with the amount of information available for consumers, customers to identify with. Being user-centered, which is something that designers are, very focused upon the needs of the user. It's just one of 3 viewpoints of people, the users, the planet, i.e. Climate change and resources, and production, how the business was making things. And there's been an increasing tension between the objectives of a business, the social objectives, and our national and international leadership. And that tension has particularly increased over the last 18 months. And next, please. So more than ever, this is something I believe in very strongly. It's a quote from Cedric Price, 1966. He said this one. He's an architect. His comment was, "Technology is the answer. What was the question?" And I identify with this because historically design has been an application. Technology has developed and something can happen. And design has come along to make it nice. That's not the way design works anymore. Technology is not the only answer. It's a way to be able to make a solution to a question that needs to be asked. And that's where the world has changed. I was going to say, en la tecnología es la respuesta, ¿cuál era la pregunta? And I think it's a fantastic quote to be able to think about how design is now influencing the world. We are asking the questions. Next, please. So I believe from also when I moved into design education, that the role of design education now is about inspiring and enabling responsibility. And that responsibility is for the younger generation to define our future societies. So what I thought I'd do is share some student projects just that show how the students are beginning to tackle the world around them. I think within the university, and certainly with the students that I support and I guide, there's been an increasing amount of activism. They feel very strongly. They want change to happen. They're impatient. They see that time is critical, and they are absolutely determined to make our societies better. I know you can see this around the world now with the amount of protests we are seeing to be able to get change to happen. Next, please. So I'm just returning to that earlier slide, which was to say, how do the 5 R's, the resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, reform, how do they relate to the future creatives, the students that we see? Next, please. Within UAL, we have a framework, the creative attributes framework. These are the key attributes that design education helps to build within our students. Proactivity, enterprise, and agility are all attributes that help students and the younger generation to make things happen. Communication, connectivity, and storytelling as attributes enable the younger generation to showcase their abilities, to stand up and be heard. And the last 3, curiosity, self-efficacy, and resilience. These are life-wide learnings that enable them to take a view on the world that they are going into and that they are creating. Next, please. Just to think along those lines as well. Sorry, Ella, do you mind just going back one? I just wanted to sort of suggest that really under the category of making things happen, that really reflects upon the McKinsey 5 R's. It reflects on reform and resolve. How can you change things and how can you be determined within that? The communication, the connectivity, and the storytelling, they really are the showcasing skills. That's where the reimagination is particularly strong. And lastly, the life-wide skills. Well, the word is already there, the resilience, the ability to tackle some of the complexities of life and the increasing difficulty for our societies to change when we've been under such complicated circumstances over the last year or two. Next, please, Al. So then I wanted to go into a project just to explain and show, rather than having lots of words, show you some images of some of the work of the students have done. So the first one is about waste in the food industry, and it was defined as a packaging design brief with a company called ABP, Anglo Beef Products. Next, please. So first, I'd like to ask a question, just for you to briefly think about. First response is always good. Where is waste created in the whole supply chain of meat? Where does the meat come from? How do we consume it? And within that process, where is waste created? Hope you've got a thought about that one. Next, please. Well, the chain starts really with the farmer, the person who's invested in growing the cattle. They will sell their cattle on, and this goes to the retailers. And the retailers are the people who then will be selling the beef to the users, who then will keep that at home. Each of them have an important role to play, and the one that the farmer themselves, just to explain, well, next slide please, actually, Ella. The answer to the question is the waste is created by the user. By far, the biggest creator of waste is the user in this chain. And I'll explain that. The farmer, with the exception, and I must thank Paul Sherritt from ABP for this information, with the exception of the brain and spinal cord due to the bovine and I can't remember, BSE, spinal and I can never say the word. With the exception of those that we have regulated cannot be sold, everything else part of the cattle is sold somewhere to someone for some use. The profit for the farmer is very much dependent upon selling every part of the cattle. So there's no benefit for them to waste anything. It's a loss for them. With the retailers, they're working with just-in-time processes to ensure that we have the right food on the shelves for customers to buy, the right amount, as fresh as possible. There's a lot of work and a lot of design gone into the logistics of that process. Anything that doesn't get sold is a loss. They want food to be fresh. They want to ensure that they've got no waste, because waste is a loss, which only leaves the user. All of us look at some packaging and we see on there a date, a sell by date and a use by date. We buy too much. We take things home. We put them in the fridge. They go beyond their use by date. And rather than opening, sniffing the food to see if it smells good or bad, we just throw it away. We just trust the information on the pack and we decide that it's old and that we can't eat it. So we throw it away. Next, please. That behavior, just throwing away something that might be okay, but we're just doing it because the label says it's out of date. By throwing that away in the UK, that relates to 100,000 cattle being unnecessarily slaughtered each year. 100,000. Now, that in itself, for people particularly, there may be some people uncomfortable with discussing meat and the markets that we have. But it is a big market. And of course, it isn't just a matter of saving the lives of animals that have been unnecessarily slaughtered. That's one viewpoint. The other viewpoint is to step back and look at the impact that cattle do have on our environment, the creation of methane, the creation of CO2, the amount of pasture that they are grazing, the amount of water that's required to grow the pastures to feed them. So from a much bigger perspective in terms of climate and environment, 100,000 cows equates to 138,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide per cow. The 221 grams of carbon dioxide is emitted for every gram of beef produced. That is a huge impact on our environment. And that's simply because we throw away food. We don't need to create that waste. We can be better at this. So we need to change our behaviors. Next, please. So this is just one of the students' projects. This is Dubin Kim, one of our Korean students. From 2020, he did this project. And he was attempting to address that amount of waste. So I'll just take you through what is his conclusion of his project. The projects are usually huge. I'll just take you through some of the key pages. So next, please. Dubin's research in the discovery phase of the design process, he realized that ready meals are a growing sector, which is very much relating to changing lifestyles of this current generation. He also identified through sort of primary research as well as secondary research that meat is becoming less desirable. Consumers' awareness of the impact that meat has on our environment is extremely high now. And he also identified that when he looked around, there are very few ready meals that are made at home or supplied as complete meals to be finished at home. There were very few that had less meat. There were meals with no meat, vegetarian and vegan options, and there were meals with meat. And those meals with meat had a high percentage of meat within them. So his insight was, well, why does this not exist yet? Next, please. He had recognized that the public wanted change. And there'd been no easy way to change behaviors around meat consumption. It was, you have meat or you don't. There was a choice, but it was binary. Next, please. So he also researched that the ideal nutritional balance was an 80-20 golden ratio. 20% to 80% of meat to vegetables. That's the ideal arrangement. Next, please. So this is what he came up with. He simply wanted to be able to create resolve a couple of issues here. One was to ensure there was with any meal you had 80% of your meal as vegetable and only 20% as meat. So much better ratio and a considerable reduction in the amount of meat that we're eating. Next, please. And he's also looking at how these meals could provide consumer choice. He wanted to match with a range of different consumers and customers that he'd identified through his research. Next, please. And therefore, he was also relating the possibilities of his solution to a range of specific scenarios, such as maybe on the right-hand side here, sharing moments, Previously, ready meals were for one person, maybe two, but rarely had they been identified as a way to share with more. By having this adaptable series of modules, the customer had choice as to what they wanted and how they would eat together. And next. And just also for him to be able to show how you had a version that could be cooked and a version that could be raw, so that you could easily take these with you if you didn't want to cook. Some versions you could take with you as well. I think it's an elegant response to what were unmet needs that allow consumers to change their behaviors. And I apologize, I don't have the specifics. His bigger project would explain exactly the materials he used. Our students also looked at great depth in terms of sustainable materials and how packaging is manufactured and recycled as well as part of their process. But I'm afraid I don't have the specific information to tell you that one. Next, please. But that was a very practical project. It's a very functional design response, because that project was for just year 2, the second year on our course. So the students, they hadn't yet absorbed so much of the world as other people have done. And our third years do tend to have a little bit more experience and have opportunity to look at things from a slightly different way. Particularly our third year students are developing very strong critical design skills. So this is another project. This is with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And as you can see here, it's about pollution in our oceans. And we'd like to think that within education, we provide the space for students to experiment and challenge. They don't deliver to a constrained brief. They have the opportunity to challenge and question why we do what we do. Why are things the way they are? How can they be better in the future? So I've got two projects to show here. They're fairly short, but Nick and Kay. So first one, next please. Again, a question to all of you to think about is, what does constitute the plastic in our oceans? Are we all a bit lazy and we just think there's plastic and I see bottles and straws, it's plastic? Have we really questioned exactly what those plastics are? And that's what our students did. They looked at the data. Next, please. Now, Nicholas's work, the thing he identified in that data was this: the plastic soy sauce fish. I find it very ironic that we are creating plastic fish that end up in our oceans, that our marine life is then eating, and it's killing so many of our fish because we simply want to show how soy sauce goes on fish and shellfish. It's truly ironic that we are doing so much damage in our own pursuit of understanding what we're eating. Next, please. So what Nicholas did, and this is a wonderful piece of work, he knew he could stop those plastic fish being produced for soy sauce if he changed the consistency of soy sauce. If he could stop it being runny, there was no need for a vessel to contain the liquid in. So he then worked very closely with one of the food retailers and looked at their supply chain and realized that what he could do is design a series of components and tools that enabled the staff who were creating the sushi in the back of the restaurants, and they doing this fresh, enable the staff to create what are these different patterned soy gels. The flavor's the same. It has the same balance within your mouthful of food. It's just no longer runny. By providing a series of tools to every single one of the restaurants, although he's making things, these can be reused regularly to make more of these soy gels, and there's no longer the need for plastic fish. This just required a small change of eating behavior by the consumer, but it makes such a huge difference to the waste that we are creating. A massive reduction in the waste simply by reconsidering how we supply soy sauce to our customers. So simple, yet incredibly beautiful at the same time. And next, please. Now this is Kay's work. I could talk about Kay's work for many hours. She has a very critical approach to design. She is very challenging. She is very quick in her mind, and she's a very strong communicator. It's no surprise that she's actually one of our tutors as well now for a day a week. Now, with the same data from the ocean plastics, Kay had identified the amount of plastic waste that came from tampons. So this project for her became a socially, economically, and ecologically sustainable menstruation management service. Now, what you see here is simply the part that the consumer, the user, interacts with. So it's a completely recyclable bioplastic fixing to go into offices and public spaces. And she was being very activist in helping government to understand the need to supply these for free. Currently in the UK, they're not. She wanted things to level up between men and women, and that was one thing that could be done. So this system plugged onto a wall, and then they had this box that supplied organic tampons. The box itself becomes a bin, and that bin gets taken away and decomposes elsewhere. And when decomposed, it becomes non-food soil for prisons and football pitches. You can't use it where you're growing food, but any other application, it is safe to use. Can you go to next, please? Now, Kay didn't just design a box, she designed the whole system. So within this system, you can see how her service system, you won't be able to see any detail on there. But she wanted to say multiple things. One, she wanted it to be understood that it's about menstruation. She didn't want to run away from this. She wanted it to look like blood. She wanted it to be red. She wanted it to be able to say, this should be free. She wanted it to be sustainable. So the delivery system of these items is conducted on bicycles, like Deliveroo. The main collection, with a certain amount, is then collected by a company who already have a service for collecting waste that only use electric vehicles using renewable energy. And where this is then taken to and composted, the heat generated is also retained to return back to the grid. She thought of every single thing, from why was there a need, what was the context, what needed to change, how can our society change these things and improve this, how can she manifest this in a system and a service that would change our behaviors. A remarkably complicated piece of work that she managed to achieve with such beauty and simplicity. And I hope that she's having conversations with several companies, and we hope that this really will alter the way that also society looks at the topic of menstruation as well. It's something not to hide behind, and not to create adverts using blue water. It's just bizarre. Next, please. So just using those as examples, I just thought I'd simply summarize some of the aspects here. Design it's just one process that enables our societies to progress. I'm not saying design is the only way to help us progress, but I do feel strongly that it's a great enabler of allowing people to see what our future can be like. And I think after a period of such enforced reflection over the last 2 years, 18 months, we should really all be looking ahead to what our futures can be. Next, please, Emma. Now, this is the double diamond design process. It's 4 stages: discover, define, develop, deliver. There are some other words on there as well, depends on what you're doing. But I think the most important part here, for understanding how the design process has altered its perspective over the last few years, is that the research phase, the discovery and the definition phase, are about designing the right thing. The following phase, the development and the delivery, are about designing things right. Historically, the right-hand side of this diagram has been where designers have been very strong. We've been developing ideas, we've been given technologies, and we've made things to work well, to be good. But back to the point, if technology is the answer, what was the question? It's the left-hand side of this diagram that matters. It's designing the right thing. And if it's a wrong thing, don't design it. We have to be stronger and to say what is actually needed for our communities and our societies, and make sure we're designing the right thing that address both the planet as a priority. Next, please. To take that down to a very specific thing we do with my course, I'm encouraging the students to understand themselves better, and where in that process, from discovery to delivery, are they most engaged. Some students are very much the front end, the definer. Others are much more of the designer. We've changed our course because we recognize that great ideas come from all different viewpoints, and that sometimes the challenge is to find the problem. There are too many things that we don't understand, and the designer has, with their creative minds, can attempt to understand and visualize what the problem is. Historically, designers are problem solvers, so are engineers, and that's why particularly product designers existed in that domain. We see the problem and we know we can fix it. So within the range of the design process, students can either be very motivated by sort of investigation of the context in which they exist and societies exist, or they can be very motivated to solve the problem that that has been discovered. The strongest students, the really strong ones, such as someone like Kay, can do both. Identify, find that problem, and then solve it. And it's an incredible breadth of capability that comes through some creative individuals. Next, please. And I want to introduce this report from the Design Council in the UK. Most years, they create this document called the Design Economy. There hasn't been one since 2018. There was a new one due very soon. But they look at the UK and how design is being utilized. The design economy in the UK, in terms of gross value add, is second only to the financial sector. It's a wonderful area to be involved in. But you can see that UK businesses, 40% of UK businesses don't engage with design, or just a little tiny bit. It might be we just need a logo changed without actually going to graphic designer. They just ask someone to make it nicer. So there's still 40% of businesses in the UK aren't using design to help progress their businesses. 26% of businesses do engage design, but it's very much about the product and trying to sell and improve a product to make it sell better. The next step up the ladder, 24% of businesses have design integrated into their operations, where it's very much the whole process of their operation has been utilizing design to make it effective and efficient. The last area, and this is the area where designers and our future creatives are working increasingly effectively, are in the 10% of businesses who are using design as a business strategy. McKinsey's, Accenture's, all these big management consultants are buying design businesses because they have the ability to visualize the future, to enable their clients to see how to grow their business, how design has become a business strategy. It's only 10%. There's a lot of area, a lot of companies that are yet to move into this area of development. Next, please. Now, the decision to engage with the design process has two advantages. Both an increase in business growth through strategy at that top level of that ladder, and also a more productive relationship with both customers and consumers. The more our customers and consumers are asking for transparency, the more that we're going to have to respond positively with them by forming a stronger relationship. But no matter what our difficulties face, utilizing creativity to either define or design our futures does require a motivated, active, and challenging younger generation. So design is not just an expression of a moment in time, which art can be. It's a tool to envision the future. And I love this quote from John Maeda, as a computer engineering genius. He puts it very simply: while great art makes you wonder, great design makes things clear. And I hope that our students, when they are looking to the future of our societies, they really understand the complexities of the evolving world around us, and their ability will be able to make all of us see the future more clearly and more positively. Thanks, one. Thanks, Ella. And thank you. I just wonder if there are any questions. Gracias, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Paul. Actually, I think we should have 1 more hour discussing the different points that you showed and the different design examples. Thank you very much. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, lo puedo hacer pasar a panelista. I would like to introduce to everybody Martín Marcos. He's the director of the museum in Argentina. And gracias, Martín, por estar acompañándonos hoy. No sé en qué canal estás, Martín, si en español o en inglés. Que cambio de inglés a español.
Estoy en español.
Ah, bueno, entonces sigo en español. Bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Encantado.
Hola.
Hola, Federica.
Hola, Martín. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Algo que quieran preguntarle a Paul?
Yo tengo algo.
Bueno, adelante.
Me encantó la charla, Paul. Me encantó esto que estamos haciendo conjuntamente con Federica en el marco de Buenos Aires Design Week. Y la verdad es que tu charla ha sido muy inspiradora. Quiero reafirmar que yo creo en eso, que yo hablo de esas mismas cosas con mis estudiantes en la Universidad de Buenos Aires, en las carreras de diseño industrial y de arquitectura, y es lo que trato de introducir todos los tiempos en la gestión del Museo de Arte Decorativo, que trata de incorporar la dimensión del diseño y estas preguntas y estas cuestiones en sus muestras temporarias y en sus actividades culturales. Ahora bien, el diseño es la respuesta. ¿Cuál era la pregunta? Porque hay algo que a mí me parece que esta pandemia, después de los primeros meses de horror, los primeros meses de tratar de entender lo sorpresivo del cambio, lo abrumador del cambio, las muertes, las tragedias, en un momento nos planteó como otra visión más optimista. Y es que la pandemia obligó a que cambiáramos radicalmente nuestras formas de comportamiento. Y vimos como inmediatamente el planeta reaccionó. Inmediatamente. El planeta mostró su resiliencia, inmediatamente cosas que habíamos dado por muertas, cosas que ya no eran habituales, como escuchar cantar los pájaros o como ver los peces en los canales de Venecia, empezaron a darse otra vez. Bien, parecería ser que estamos volviendo a una nueva normalidad, pero dejando atrás el horror de las muertes y de la pandemia. Y ese volver está volviendo a las antiguas prácticas, que me parece que es los temas que vos le planteás a tus estudiantes. Ahora, mi pregunta es, los tiempos del planeta, los tiempos que ya desde hace tantos años muchos académicos, intelectuales nos han venido advirtiendo de que no podíamos seguir estirando más de la soga, que no podíamos seguir tirando más de nuestra inestable sustentabilidad ambiental, social y económica. Eso es posible en el marco de estas reglas del juego que vuelven a tomar fuerza. El crecimiento ilimitado, la sociedad de consumo, capitalismo, liberalismo, positivismo, que ha marcado una forma de vida, una forma de progreso, una forma de insertarnos en la cultura. ¿Eso no deberíamos también revisarlo desde un punto de vista crítico? Me interesaría, Paul, tu opinión sobre las teorías del decrecimiento y cómo eso podría ser compatible con un pensamiento de diseño. Gracias.
Oh, gracias. I have no business training. My experience has been from designing within business. But we now recognize that growth is no longer the sole goal for business. The development of the B Corp businesses has shown us that we can have different models whereby products and services can be no longer toxic, that they can be valuable and they can be harm-free. It's for me, the most important thing here is that we understand the need to give ourselves the depth of consideration to anything that we do and to not be lazy, to not go for the simple answer, but be able to use our intelligence and our passion to solve these problems. And that's why I think creatives, designers are very good, because they're passionate about what they do. Now, the timescale is critical. One of my tutors, Jane Penty, she has written a book on sustainable products. That's her. It's a thick book. She will talk about this 10 years that we have, that we've gone too far. We've used up, I think it's 3.5 planets of resources at the moment. that we have gone too far, that maybe what we should be doing as creatives, as designers, are two things. One is to design for survival. Things could get bad. How are we going to ensure that as many people as possible can survive what's coming? So when you think about floods, we think about the temperature change, you think about refugee crisis, we can design things to help. We won't be able to solve it. It's unlikely we'll be able to solve it, but we can help. The other thing we can do, which I think is where we should be thinking more or less about financial growth, but more about the value that any sort of energy business could have and maintaining a customer base, is in restorative products. Products that put back, that don't just level things out to carbon zero, they put things back. Those, I think, for me, is the biggest challenge and the most exciting aspect for our new generation, is to design those things that remove the carbon from the air and put them back where they can be stored safely, where we can manage our water effectively and reduce the toxins. Everything we saw happening during the pandemic, the improvements we had to the quality of our life, can be reversed. But we need to think about how we do it. And at the moment, I would say that's not being discussed enough. And why, you know, someone like Jane with our course is very useful in being able to help our students understand that we can actually do something. But we do also have to prepare for a very difficult 20 years. We've got 10 years before things are very, very, very difficult. In 20 years, we might be able to have done something about it, but there's going to be a very difficult time ahead for sure. And it sounds very negative, but I think this is also part of the process of designing, is that what we encourage the students to do is look at both the utopic response and the dystopic response. Hollywood films love doing the dystopic. They love those. And there's lots of sort of disaster movies that talk about a terrible future. The utopic stories are also told by our designers. And I think we need to look at both and then communicate these effectively through all the tools we have, both the visual tools, the creative tools, tell the stories, make those videos, make those films to encourage people to understand that something can be done. And then you get the positive energy behind that enables people to feel it's worth doing something. Societies would link and they would start to make a difference. So I think we've got a tough time ahead, but we have got the capability to do something about it if we get people thinking correctly now. It's a very long answer though.
Nos deja pensando, Paul, reflexionando muchísimo. Muchísimas gracias por... Bueno, vamos a ir cerrando. Si nadie tiene ninguna consulta, vamos a cerrar por acá. Martín, una vez más, muchas gracias por apoyar esta iniciativa. Paul, gracias por la charla y gracias a todos los que nos acompañaron. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Muchas gracias.
Bye bye, Paul.
Adiós.
Adiós.